The Minister of Children says it's not possible to immediately end the practice of uplifting children deemed to be at risk. More than 300 people rallied at Parliament today demanding that Oranga Tamariki stop removing children from their whānau. An open letter signed by 17,000 people calling for an end to the practice of removing the children was handed to Green Party co-leader Marama Davidson. Now, Marama Davidson described uplifts as trauma and abuse to protesters today. So I asked Tracey Martin what discussions she'd had with Marama Davidson about the practice.
I've had her fully briefed on the changes that are taking place with Oranga Tamariki to better work with iwi. I've had her fully briefed by officials. I sat down and had conversations with her. We talked about what her comments would be outside to the protest. So I'm literally stunned that those words, if she's using them in the context of Oranga Tamariki.
And when you had that meeting with Marama Davidson, what were her comments? What were her comments to you about what she would say?
Basically, she said she was very supportive of the changes that were happening with Oranga Tamariki. She understood them fully now that I had had her briefed by officials. She wanted to help me in any way, shape or form that she could to continue to work with iwi as we have been over the last year to better support prevention and early intervention, and that she undertook for me that she would ask the protesters to stop threatening Oranga Tamariki social workers.
So how helpful is this as a government partner that the co-leader of the Green Party is out there characterising the situation as torture and abuse?
I can't speak for the government and the government relationship because that would be sort of above my pay grade. But from my perspective, with regard to my desire to continue to work with iwi and Māori organisations, with families that are under stress around New Zealand, so that we can deliver on the vision of the expert advisory panel and finally have a child protection service and start stopping children coming into our care, I would suggest that statements like that probably aren't helpful.
1, 2, 3, 4, you will take our kids no more. There were not that many protesters outside. Perhaps the rain kept a lot of them away, but they were certainly very passionate and very hard to argue with. Dame Tariana Turia was there and calling for a halt on all uplifts of Māori children. She said effective immediately. How do you characterise that call?
Well, it's not possible. So it's not possible at the moment because there are still children whose lives are in danger, and there are children who are terribly neglected and treated badly. Every 2 days, a child in this country shows up at a hospital with a non-accidental injury. We've had 3 little people pass away since that video went live that created the momentum for this protest. So it's easy to say, but it's not going to happen. But I am dedicated to, and actually I sat down with Tiriana Turia in Whanganui only a fortnight ago when I spoke with other kaumātua and kuia there and said that I absolutely will work with them to find what will work for their community to prevent and to, as early intervention and prevention methods so that we can stop children coming into Oranga Tamariki's care.
It's very hard to argue with a mother like many who've spoken to us and to some of our programs, and probably people that travelled a good way down the country to be there at Parliament today, who say that their tamariki are returned 5 years later and the words used are broken, abused, devastated. Are you confident that those sorts of situations are historic and not ongoing?
Oranga Tamariki, the expert advisory panel made it very clear that we had to change from what was the child, youth and family situation. And I don't know how many of the people down there dealt with child, youth and family as opposed to have been dealing with Oranga Tamariki. But the expert advisory panel said it would take a minimum of 5 years and investment of billions of dollars to change what was a child crisis service into a child protection service. So it's not there yet. No, it's not. Only 29 days ago did I get the $1.1 billion that I need to really start rebuilding this.
It's been a while since the name change, so perhaps you could tell us, apart from the name change, what's been the biggest and best change?
I would say the biggest and best change in the last year, because it's only been 2 years since the Oranga Tamariki has actually been in existence, have been the strategic partnerships with iwi, Ngāi Tahu, Ngāpui and Waikato Tainui, which have stopped children coming into Oranga Tamariki's care. Increases in social workers, increases in caregivers and their training. So all of that has been the best thing, I believe, that has taken place since those changes.
I think this is the 18th review or inquiry over 30 years. How confident are you that this one will work?
That's not true, and that's a problem that we've had. So you've got John Tamahiri saying it's the 14th review in 22 years. Oranga Tamariki is 2 years old. It is nothing like CYFS was.
Well, it's a change of name. It's effectively the same organisation. You can't be fooling yourself about that, surely.
That is not true. And so there are 6 cabinet papers that have gone through, a completely different operating model, more money than has ever been put into this child protection service than ever before was put in just 29 days ago. This is not child, youth and family, and it has never had a review that it has failed. So people need to recognise the moment what the expert advisory panel said and the fact we are trying to rebuild, rather than continuing to attack for the work that was done before Oranga Tamariki existed.
Have you spoken to Oranga Tamariki staff? I know you don't get so involved in those operational matters, but you are across the detail. What have you told the staff while these reviews are ongoing?
What I've asked the staff to do is to keep protecting children. I'm very aware that many of our staff have been abused, have received threatening messages, they've had to shut down social media accounts, that they have, personally, they have felt that they have been threatened and unsafe. But they have continued to show up at work. They have continued to put the children that we know in this country that are at risk. So I've just asked them and thanked them for continually doing their job while we continue to change from a child crisis service to a child protection service.
Minister, what would you say is the common denominator in these uplift stories? Is it addiction, perhaps? Is it poverty?
Yeah. There's those are the stresses, although not everybody who's poor finds themselves mistreating their children. So let's be clear, it's not a single marker here. But what it says is we as a country need to be supporting our families more. We need to be funding prevention and early intervention services across the board to stop our families getting to this place of crisis where they are harming their children. And I do believe that Māori have answers for Māori. I believe community have answers for community. And I want to work more closely to the ground, and I am instructing Oranga Tamariki to do that, to find those solutions, because no government department can raise a child. A child needs to be raised in a family, and whether that's hopefully their immediate mum and dad, but if it's their wider family, whether it be iwi or hapu, they would do much better there than they would do with any government department.
Minister for Children Tracey Martin there.